How much of our lives are spent uselessly adhering to arbitrarily imposed restrictions, laws, rules, whether it be self-imposed or externally imposed, only to realize after the fact, perhaps sometimes, oftentimes years after the fact, that one has wasted away their time in such a fashion that it was all bullshit, all for naught. Constantly, I see that in myself. Time passes, I look back on a certain period of time, my behavior that was transpiring at that time, the fashion that it did, in which it did, and I see that not only was I adhering to bullshit needlessly, that I was fully asleep. I was in a trance. All the while I thought I was perfectly lucid, conscious, deliberate in all that I did. That my reasons for behaving as I did were relatively incontestable. I would be thoroughly convinced of my own arguments at the time were I to engage in debate with another on the matter. This whole theme of being in a trance is, I guess, something I've spoken on to, I guess, a considerable amount on this channel. It's one of my hang-ups, I suppose, right? I've mentioned that also. What I've observed in others, is, as well as myself, is this latching on to specific sets of ideas and never really extricating oneself from them, never fully resolving them. Those preoccupations, once arrived at whatever age it is, most probably it is largely congruent with the consolidation of the prefrontal cortex, its full maturation at the age of around 25 or so. But yeah, once that point is reached and all these preoccupations are latched onto, one never fully rids himself of them. They will be with one until the day the one dies. These fixed pathways of thought, neural pathways. If you ever looked into the psychology, the neurology around that, it's quite interesting. The way that these fixed patterns of thought sort of just over time form something of a rut, and it becomes the default pathway that one follows, and it's very difficult to reorient that. Very difficult. I suppose I return to this idea so much to get back on track, because I see that I constantly fall back into the same thing over and over again. Constant cycles of resolution and disintegration. Building up my proverbial empire and then watching it collapse, and feeling the stones of the foundations crumble between my fingertips and return to sand. and blow away in the wind that I hope isn't ruining this recording, as it's quite windy here. Sitting in the woods on New Year's Eve. Not that the whole New Year's Eve thing really means fucking anything. Most people probably listening to this are aware of the fact that there are multiple ways to measure a year, right? Based upon sort of objective things, and seemingly objective things, right, that occur within consensus reality. And typically, this is, in cultures around the world, this has been based on astrological events, cyclical astrological events. I mean, all astrological events are cyclical. The sky is a clock, right? We live in a clock of sorts. So there are different ways, different points of the cycle, different facets of it that one can latch upon and call a year. But in our culture, supposedly, Western culture, right? Western culture, this is done it's a solar cycle that we follow. But we're slightly out of sync because, the actual year, in terms of the sun ascending again, starting a cycle began on the 25th, thereabouts. It doesn't entirely cohere, but adhere, sorry. But we follow the Gregorian calendar, and I won't get into that. That's another topic for a different time. But yeah, just to in short, this is very arbitrary. This set point of the 31st of December. It basically adheres to nothing. Perhaps I'm wrong. Maybe someone can correct me on that if they know something I don't. I'm always interested in learning something different. Don't anyone listening to this think that I'm some kind of oracle or whatever, or that I perceive myself to be some kind of oracle. Mostly what I'm doing here is just speaking my thoughts and opinions as they occur to me in the moment. And I'm very well aware of the fact that I don't know basically anything. And so if anyone perceives that I say something incorrectly or that I'm missing some aspect on some certain piece of information, then please feel free to correct me if you feel so inclined. I would appreciate that. But yeah, that was something of a tangent. I can't remember exactly where I was. I suppose I guess I'll just go sort of free flow with this. I didn't have a specific topic in mind as I have in other more recent recordings. I suppose this could be seen as a somewhat of end of fucking solar cycle review, looking forward, assessing the fundamental sort of flavor of my existence as it currently stands, or whatever. And maybe or maybe not, anyone listening to this will get something out of this. And this isn't just a circle jerk of one, I guess. Or, whatever. Yeah. Yeah. And so I guess I'm sitting here now in the woods, in the wind, in the darkness and the half rain that hopefully doesn't turn into full rain. And I guess I'm just thinking of how utterly fallible and deluded I am, even when I perceive myself to not be, constantly kind of at the mercy of the environment, which in many ways is wholly indistinguishable from myself, as I've said in previous recordings of these. It's difficult to know how to to operate, how to proceed. Time is constantly passing, and one is compelled to act in one way or another, whether they like it or not. Even non-action is itself an action one cannot not do. One is always doing. And it's my sort of fairly persistently apparent contention that one possesses very little to arguably entirely no agency over any of that, what any of that consists of, that doing or not doing, which is itself doing. So in that sense, it's kind of a moot point of discussion. I should, in some ways, just resign myself to seizing this recording and forget about analyzing the situation, just expressing my thoughts, because all of it is entirely undeliberate and not of me. Everything can be questioned. Everything can be questioned. I oftentimes think that just the most correct way to interact with this place, if it is a place, is to do nothing at all, which I suppose would just inevitably become something Taoist in nature when one is ultimately compelled to take action. One would, in doing nothing, unifies themselves with the Tao, with the essential flow of all that is. One never not was that. One only has to resign themselves to that fact, which is itself completely out of their hands. There goes the paradoxes again. It's way before I knew about, I knew about Buddhism. I was familiar with it on a very superficial level, but I'd never done any sort of in-depth research, really fully familiarized myself with the mythology of the Buddha, Siddhartha Buddha is his name. As it goes in the story, Prince Siddhartha, long before I ever really knew the particulars of that story, well, not long before, I'll say like a year before, I suffered from depression a great deal in the past. I suppose I still do, but I was much more at the mercy of it in my younger years. And one particular sort of depressive episode, which used to be much more sort of catatonic in nature. Now I'm more just anhedonic and like irritable, say. But yeah, they used to be much more classical in their presentation, sorry, when I was younger. And yeah, and one for the wind. I don't know what it's doing to the mic, so it's just prudent to, yeah. in one particular instant, when I was, I guess, 18, right, in one of these more so catatonically characterized episodes, I was catatonic, more or less, in a room. It wasn't my room, it was a room. Not that that really matters, the story. And I was sitting there thinking, writing, actually, journaling. I used to do that at the time, I don't do it at all anymore. I suppose maybe this is a surrogate form of journaling. Maybe. But I was sitting there and doing my journaling stuff. And I was kind of trying to figure out this problem, like what the hell was going on, what was wrong with me, what was wrong with the world, so on and so forth. How should I conduct myself going forward? How should I conduct myself now? How to know truth, what is truth, all of this garbage. And yeah, I kind of arrived upon this idea of that a resolution to this would be to just sit and not move, not do anything at all, not even get up to urinate or defecate or eat or drink, anything, just completely sit until this problem resolved itself. And yeah, it's, of course, lines up very much with what the Buddha basically resigned himself to do. Not that I'm comparing myself to the Buddha, for fuck's sake. I'm not that I don't have delusions of grandeur. I'm very aware of how insignificant I am on this human plane, this plane of being, of material forms. Significant in other words, insignificant in other words. The paradox again, right? But yeah, so that's what I arrived at, and of course it does very much parallel what the Buddha himself resolved to do, and how he ultimately attained enlightenment by just stopping, by ceasing to participate in anything and just be, just let this issue resolve itself. Let the mind settle to a calm place of tranquility, and thus the light of pure being will reveal itself. It will reveal itself to be the very substance of that which was all along. It's just, to use one of the common analogies that people use in this regard, is it's you have a glass of water that's full of sediment, sand, right? You put some sand in a glass of water, and this is your mind, okay? And you're constantly stirring the water over and over and over again, never letting it settle. And it's just, the effect is this feeling of turmoil, of chaos. Everything is constantly in motion, nothing to latch onto. One can't formulate anything concrete and lasting to begin to build upon, for everything is constantly in flux and flow and so on. But if one ceases to put their disgusting little fucking filthy stirring stick in this glass, right? They retract it and they just sit. And, well, they just sit. No expectation. No goal, no destination, just sit. Then, at last, the sediment will begin to settle, and they will see the pure clarity of that which was what the sediment was suspended in all that time. The sediment being this detritus of thoughts, attachments, desires, blah blah blah. You get the idea, I think. Probably. So I keep coming back to that, and it's something I keep coming back to in terms of, I guess now, like how to resolve this trance issue, right? Of constantly looking back on past times and perceiving that I was asleep, even though I thought I was awake. And I have also observed that I do, in fact, return to that. That is something that I return to in each instant of identifying this in my past, of behaving in an unconscious manner when I perceived myself to be lucid. I do, in part, resolve to resign myself to this state of endeavoring without endeavoring. Paradox, right? To see, to realize this pure state of awareness, and from that point only proceed. Only when that point is reached. And of course, I suppose I delude myself, I guess would be the argument, into perceiving that such a thing, or an inkling of such a thing, has been attained, when really I would suggest perhaps that it's more so of a fabrication, a facsimile of such a thing, what I believe such a thing to be. And from that arises things that I take to be facts. Facts that I believe I am at liberty to identify as being facts, for the very fact that they, to the best of my knowledge, as it appeared to me, emerge from this state of pure, clear seeing, when really they were most probably well, I stuck my filthy fucking disgusting staring stick into the glass again, and I had my hands covering my eyes as I did so, dreaming that I was awake, when I'd never woken up to begin with. So I guess something of the theme here is false summits. It's what seems to be revealing itself, at least. False summits that we constantly go back to. Everyone, I believe, has this circular life pattern to some extent. These recurring situations, this knot. I came across that somewhere, I don't remember where. It's kind of a cult idea, I would like to say, but I'm not entirely sure. This idea of a knot, one's life being something of a knot, and that one has to, the purpose of one's life is to unravel this knot. This, well, I suppose now I think about it, it comes back to this contraction, right? The eye contraction. The eye of the knot. One unravels the knot, releases the binds, and, I guess, becomes diffuse. Or something of the sort, perhaps. Yeah. All right. I'll probably, I guess somewhat ironically, probably begin to go around circles, in circles, um, if I continue any longer, making something of a knot out of this recording. So I will stop now and let you return to your life, and I'll return to mine.